What used to take a lot of manual processes, now are all digitized. And we look across any business, any firm, and we see all the opportunities now, not only to digitize the data, but also to streamline the flow. See, the problem with a lot of firms is they use email to transfer data, or they use static portals where only I can get access to, or only you can get access to. But the modern portals allow anybody who's on the team, from both the firm perspective and the client's perspective, to get access to those files if they're authorized to do so.
Welcome to the BDO Evolve special podcast edition of WTF. We are trying to figure things out. I am Vibhu Khanna from MYCPE ONE, and I brought today with me a Roman. Roman works with Rightworks. He's been a leading voice in the profession. I would like to introduce and give a warm welcome to Roman.
Thank you, Vibhu.
How are you?
Doing wonderful. Appreciate being here. Yeah. It's been a great conference here. Busy 3 days here.
Absolutely.
In Las Vegas, so things happen all day and at night.
Great. So, how things have been for you for the last 3 days? Like, you have been speaking as well at some of the sessions I saw?
Yes. Interesting, 2 years ago when we looked at what BDO was spending all of their time on, I was doing presentations for the CAS tech stack, so client accounting and advisory services, and we were designing integrated tech stacks to help the firm service their clients and narrowing that down. And then last year we switched everything to artificial intelligence. So that was the introduction of ChatGPT and what's the real use of AI inside of firms, and how do you train and learn it, at least prepare for this incoming wave. And I went around the country, did all the regional conferences and everything. And this year, what's crazy, they're asking me to do security. So we see security coming full circle around as being a primary concern for all the different parts of the accounting firm. It's not only tax and assurance, but the CAS integration with clients and everything. And then, this year they actually asked me to integrate, making sure you not only protect your firm, but yourself and your family. So there's kind of an interesting twist. And I think I'm doing that 6 more times this year.
Great. So let's go a bit, deep into Roman as a personality. I know that you worked with CPA firm for more than 3 decades. It's been a long time. So we want to kind of, understand and start with understanding how this passion, was sparked. Like, what was the starting point? Because we're talking like, I think late 80s or early 90s, where technology was still, not something which was in the mainstream, correct?
Well, believe it or not, I started out as a tax person.
Okay.
And a CPA. So by integration in the mid to late 80s, all of a sudden PCs and CD-ROMs, we used to actually set up CD-ROM towers. I went around we had 14 locations around Arizona, and I configured those CD towers. So the library was now digital automated. And then we started looking at PCs and developing networks. And so I became Novell certified. Mm-hmm. And so even though I was doing my accounting work, my tax work, passing my CPA exam and all that, I kind of just helped out everybody. Every time there was a computer question, we just asked Roman. He's a computer guy, or he knows it. And so it didn't matter what the computer question was, they assumed I knew it. And I was very passionate about it. I enjoyed it. And over the next 5 years, I actually created all the networks in the offices. And then the claim to fame was when we centralized that in Arizona, and I opened up our administrative office, mm-hmm. and we centralized all of the tax processing in one location. And back then that was like bleeding edge stuff. And so we were one of the first Citrix pilots.
Right.
And basically I got tagged to do that. And that led to my partnership in the firm. Oh. And so I was one of 23 partners in this large firm, like I said. And we were part of an association called API back then that became Moore Stevens. And a lot of the other firms had questions about how do we streamline production stuff internally? Mm-hmm. And I would raise my hand and say, here's what we did. And that's how I became a consultant. People were asking me questions. I started helping firms in our association. Then I became a member of the AICPA's IT subdivision. And actually for that group, I ran the top 10 technologies task force for probably 5 years, practices subcommittee in the IT exec committee. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is a combination of my firm needing someone to lead the charge on technology and an opportunity through the AICPA and the associations to help other firms kind of launched my career. And the good thing about technology is that there's always something cool and exciting happening. The bad thing is it's changing at a faster and faster rate. So more and more time needs to be set in understanding that and keeping up with it.
From being a go-to person and, having those initial days of just, being the only person probably in the team or in the office, now you work as a director at Rightworks, right? And big clients in big firms, right? So what kind of firms now you're typically dealing with, and what kind of problems are you solving for them in this current role?
Yep. Well, if you look at what is, you mentioned I'm a Lean Six Sigma Black Belt, and so we look at everything as a process, is how can you move data through the firm with as few touches and with a minimization of errors that's possible. And we know humans can make errors. Yeah. We all know that's the issue. So we try to automate where it makes sense in the process where we can eliminate the friction as the data moves through the system. That starts with ingress from the client. And so I primarily work with medium and large size firms. My sweet spot in the firm is probably 75 members. I've worked with firms as small as 20 members, but like I said, I've done over 400 firms in the last 30 years, including 30 of the top 100, where they use me as an independent outsourced IT kind of partner or associate. Right. And I think one thing that helps is I'm involved with a group called CPA-FMA, the CPA Firm Management Association, and they are medium and larger size firms, and they do semi-annual surveys, or I should say biannual. Every other year it's on hardware, and then the interim year is on applications. And so we see firsthand what firms are actually buying, what they're changing to, the products they like. And then I facilitate the roundtables, so we get to hear what works and what doesn't. And I'm a very strong proponent of the roundtables because when something doesn't work, sometimes it's a lack of knowledge, but other times some of the other firms have figured it out. And that's pretty much what it is. I learn, I go to these meetings, I learn what firms are doing, what's working, what's not. And we really focus on helping firms implement the things that improve tax production, collaboration with clients, audit automation, and then all the back office operations, from practice management to document management, their own control, accounting, payroll. Right.
So from having a fascination for kind of, learning things and, being somebody who's open to learning and on, what I know is that you've also written a book, right?
Yeah.
You're an educator as well. You go to these conferences, you've been conducting speaking sessions. So let's talk about your book, Quantum of Principles. How did that idea come about? And
okay, well, the book is Quantum of Paperless.
Quantum of Paperless.
Yeah, and back in the mid-2000s, 2005 to 2010, what happened, there was a lot of applications out there that were trying to emulate stuff and make it paperless. Had I written the book today, I would call it Quantum of Digital. But we used the term Quantum of Paperless because we had needed to make leaps forward basically on digitizing the data of UK. And paperless was the common term we used at that time. And so I basically originally wrote it as a marketing piece to say, here are 32 things that you need to be aware of in your firm.
Right.
And these were, when I was consulting with firms, I could give them a high-level overview of this should be part of your firm's technology strategy that integrates in your firm's overall strategy. And here are the best practices. And I would use the surveys from CPFMA to say, here's what firms are buying today, here's what firms are implementing, the tools they're using, and all of that. And so that book started out as kind of a marketing piece, but then people started asking a lot of questions about it, and the AICPA picked it up for their PCPS, and I think, like 4,000 copies were distributed over the years. I've been selling it. But the main purpose of it was the technology books at that time tended to be like hundreds of pages long, and it took hours to read, and by the time they got published, they were obsolete. So I actually went to the Amazon platform and created a book that I could update on the fly random. And so when I learned something new or a new statistic came out, we would go to, that's why when you look online, it says 11th edition. When there was any major changes, we could literally change it that day, and anybody who ordered the book would get the most current version at that time. Now, I wouldn't recommend it. It's a high-level overview now, but the AI stuff that has happened and robotic process automation and the remote things that happened during COVID have changed everything out of that book.
Absolutely. That's my next question now. so much experience, written books over 11 editions, and consulting so many firms. Now we hear a term called future-ready firms.
Yep.
Right. So, what is it from your perspective? What a future-ready firm looks like today, from a technology and workflow perspective?
Okay. When I think of future ready, I think of stable edge. I think of innovation, but not bleeding edge. And between innovation and bleeding, there's a fine line. And I think what happens is there's so much being thrown at us, particularly now that there's PE money and there's lots of marketing and advertising everywhere. I mean, I think they have like 187 BRNs here. It's crazy. But when I look at innovation, for me, innovation is just when a firm has implemented a technology, used it for a year, rolled over, and it worked, then it becomes quantifiable. And so I look for firms that have done things well. You know, I get pitched all the time. I read about the potential of different products. The ones that have had a few firms properly implement a tool and be happy with it and comfortable. As a consultant, those are things that we want to be advising our clients on. You want to be advising them on guaranteed wins, not maybes. So I'll be honest, I never do any consulting on CRM systems, because CRM systems are always a career restricting move. That's the joke in the industry, because everyone has a different opinion on what they want, and there's no implementations. But there are certain modern portals, there's certain workflow tools, certain practice management tools that firms, once they implement it, they see a significant improvement in productivity. It's definitely measurable. They see it in their staff, the way they transition to work, and they actually change their workflow. You know, I'll say one of my flaws in my book, Quantum Paperless, is we digitized manual systems.
Right.
And these new workflow tools and collaboration tools, they're actually streamlining, which is what Lean Six is supposed to do, is you look at the process and you change it so that you can eliminate error. And sometimes that means eliminating the humans that did those jobs. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of tools we look at. We look for solid innovation that actually solves a problem that firms are spending a lot of time on, that's in there, as opposed to something that's really cool. Because there's an unending stream of cool stuff.
True. And that keeps kind of, being launched and evolving every quarter to quarter. I mean, if you look at how AI has been over the last 2 years, every day a new news is coming in.
Oh,
You'll feel like left out. You'll feel like left out. I'm like waking up in the morning and I see 5 new, updates on this is new, that is new. Grokko's doing this, XCX is doing this, ChatGPT has come with a version, and I totally agree with, the perspective that you have on this.
Yeah, it's accelerating. Yesterday I did a speech on Think Like a Hacker on cybersecurity. We're saying that 2.5 years ago, there was a study done that AI's ability to write phishing emails had come above parity with humans. It was basically that good. And we're saying, think about how much change we've had in this last 18 months. And all of a sudden, now you know that the software is well more advanced than any of us had thought.
If you had to rename the book, because, you now feel that after 11 editions, the perspective has changed. So let's go back to, how has your thinking evolved, from those times when this actually started, that, the paperless thing.
Yeah.
So what that journey has been like?
Looking back to the change when I first started out, we were primarily digitizing manual processes. So that instead of scanning and doing the processing, we try to do it more up front. Nowadays, there's a lot more automation capabilities in there, and especially when you look at Lean, it actually changes the process. So not only can we get source documents from a portal and go through OCR and capture all the data and then put it in the tax return, we can actually analyze the data and find diagnostics to see what issues. And so what used to take a lot of manual processes, now we're all digitized. And we look across any business, any firm, and we see all the opportunities now, not only to digitize the data, but also to streamline the flow. And today, I think it really begins with us educating our clients. We go back to the first time we touch the client, oftentimes is an engagement letter or something, and there's automation tools that do a really good job at that. But once we start working with them, we've got to get their documents into a modern portal. And we've seen that modern portals have been done great things to help firms streamline the collection of data at the front end. Not only does it put it in one place, but it also standardizes the data so that as we start using these automated tools down the road, we're using a standard format with a standard file naming structure, standard directory structure, which today where you have people working in a hybrid environment, any place, anywhere, is mission critical. They need to be able to get access to the files in the firm's standard format, regardless of where they're at. And so when I talk about digitizing data, we try to make a flow that cannot create an error. Right. It literally comes in, and the next step is there's QC levels that go along the way, but the next step is automated. And if there's an anomaly, it can be fixed so that it doesn't happen again.
Right, right. Talking about tools, like with so many tools in the market right now, how should firms look at it, and how should they prioritize kind of things, like which tools to kind of start with, what is something which they need to apply as a principle, and specifically to CPA firms?
Yeah. Well, every tax season we do a tax season debrief survey, because the people that know where there's bottlenecks and problems are the people that are doing the work. So when we do the survey, and we have it on our website, the 10 questions you need to ask your employees. One of the questions, is basically, what could we improve upon, and how are these things? What were the biggest bottlenecks, waste of your time? And your staff will tell you that. And as an owner in an organization, you want to solve the problems that have the biggest ROI or reduce the friction that you have in your firm. So there's a lot of cool stuff out there. But if you have an issue, whether it's like for the auditors, it's often client ingress of documents. You're getting their documents in on time, which a modern portal solves. For tax people, it's communicating data back and forth and getting signatures. So there's tools like C Paperless, SafeSend, SafeSign that eliminate a lot of that back and forth by reducing not only professional staff time, but administrative staff time. And it frees up that time for them to do other work for the client.
Right. Now, coming back to Lean Six Sigma, you are a professional in that. And again, I'm sure you would have done a lot of projects, considering the time constraint we have, you can't talk much about it, but quickly, some principles that do apply to CPA firms.
Okay. When we talk about Lean Six Sigma, what I narrowed down in the accounting profession is basically eliminating waste, moving information without error. So that's kind of what we really push it down to. And so anytime we can have an automated process that checks itself and notifies you if there's a problem, you're going to get a lean flow through there. And so the example I gave you, when we talk about client ingress of documents for auditors, for instance, if the client doesn't have all their data in there on time, what happens is the auditors have to delay that start, and most audit firms are very tight structured. Well, that delay cascades through all the jobs, and so it ends up messing up the entire season. And so the advent of modern portals, products such as SureLink, created the ability for pretty much the firm to put the PDC list of the things that are required by the client into a portal. The client's team can get access to it. See, the problem with a lot of firms is they use email to transfer data, or they use static portals where only I can get access to, or only you can get access to. But the modern portals allow anybody who's on the team, from both the firm perspective and the client's perspective, to get access to those files if they're authorized to do so. And so what SureLink automated, which was really cool, is they created a dashboard that when you look at, let's say, any 12 financial reports to start the audit, they put that on the list and then allowed it to make it very easy for anybody on the client's team to drag documents right up to them, and then turn the light from red to green. And there would be notifications that your audit is starting in 3 weeks and you are 70% complete. Please make sure you fill out these 3. And this was all automated. And so the client would get notifications. The staff person, when they check onto it, if they see if they were 2 weeks out and they were still missing something, they could contact the client and say, are you having trouble getting this? Will you have it on time? And so we saw that make massive improvements in basically the whole audit season, just by making sure the client ingress was there. And we see all the vendors copying that modern portal format.
Right. So that's about, how efficiency can be achieved, right?
Yeah.
So some low-hanging fruits that a firm can today think of, when it comes to efficiency, like if you have to give 3 quick tips.
When I talk about like a quick hits there, I would say making it anything with your interactions with your clients that's easy. And so, for example, there are certain tools out there that when you're finished with the tax return, you can actually upload the invoice. You can upload all their payment slips, whatever their tax return to finish it, and you can send that to both the taxpayer and the spouse. And it does all the follow-up and backup for you. And so if something is not signed, and a day later, it'll remind that person. And so that used to be people calling and doing that and sending it back and forth. So that's one process we've seen really improve in firms. Another is payment systems. And so it used to be that we'd have to invoice a client. Well, now, and you can do this with a SafeSend, you can put the invoice inside there, and actually there's a place where you can click and they can do the payment. And there's tools like Quick Fee, Affinipay, CPA Charge, that basically will allow the client to make a payment. They can pay on credit card if they want, which they have to pay the 3% fee. They can pay with ACH. If they choose to write a check, they can, but it's actually training our clients to use ACH. And the beauty of that back-end systems is some of them, such as Ignition, actually make the journal entry to go into your practice management or into your accounting system. Again, it eliminates the human error of someone rekeying data or having to reconcile in their place. And so anytime you can touch it once and flow it all the way through and completion, you're gaining efficiency.
Right. Let's talk about, an aspect which is very important when it comes to, technological changes or any kind of new implementations. And I'm sure you would have seen it across the projects. That's people buy, and doesn't matter if it was, say a manager, say a senior stakeholder, you would have seen objections across, the board. So give us some examples. Have that been the case?
Say one thing is our industry, the major vendors have traditionally overpromised and underdelivered. So we have a long history of maybe not trusting that things are going to work the way they're being told to work. So my approach is always to recommend and implement those things that we know are home runs, the things that are going to work, that are out there, that have been proven to other firms. We can tell them to pilot things and look at it. Like right now, we're having them pilot ChatGPT, certain features, so they get comfortable with using prompting and all that. But when we talk about implementations, you always want to make sure you have a high probability of success. So when you have pushback from people, what I found, accountants, we do our due diligence very good. And so you have 2 or 3 peer firms, which is one of the great things about the BDO Alliance and groups like CPFMA. You can contact those peers and say, did it work the way they say it was going to? Yeah. And what we found is a lot of those peers actually have checklists, user guides, and that helps increase successful adoption. And if you focus on implementing those things that have been successful in other firms, that there's statistics show that it's not the bleeding edge, but we call it the leading edge or the stable edge. It's usually 1 year, sometimes 1.5 years after a product comes out and other firms have adopted it. And we found that, it's better to approach it from no chance for failure than a hope for success.
Great. So now we're talking about, continuously improving things and all, but I'm sure it starts something from which is related to the culture one. And that's like kind of my last question. What kind of recommendations you have for the firms to build that culture, so that these options, these opportunities for continuous improvement can be cultivated? Because, as you said before, the employees who are working at the ground level, they will come up with, the problems. They might even have solutions at times. So how a firm can build that kind of a culture?
Well, I think something that another flaw of the CPA profession is that we get so busy that we only do CPE for what's really required and needed, as opposed to improving our individual skills. And so with the rate of change happening so rapidly today anymore, I think all firms need to adopt a learning culture mentality. I mean, even just for security, you need to have security updates constantly all the time to protect your firm. But all the other changes is when we adopt a change, we need to make sure that it's easy for people to use it, and they're excited about it as opposed to dreading it. And the only way we're going to do that is just having adequate resources to document best practices. And fortunately today, with the digital things like in Teams and in Zoom, where you can actually create transcripts, you can create videos and all that, we can create just-in-time learning much more cost effectively than it was in the past. But I think that's we're going to see is firms are going to put in increased emphasis, having training coordinators on staff who, they may even be digital coordinators, where they're taking the knowledge that's captured on a process and putting it into teams or into, some kind of central infrastructure, one space where people get access to it, right, and can learn from it. And when you have a quick question on something, we used to go ask the expert. Now we're going to ask the video of the library of the expert. It's great. It's in there.
Yeah, great, awesome. Now some quick rapid fire questions before we kind of do a wrap up. One tech trend that you're excited for CTF firms in 2025?
Well, it's crazy. I spoke all last year on ChatGPT and how we're building private GPTs to customize for the niches we work in, all that. And then in January, I really learned about agentic AI, and in particular that once OpenAI adopted the same standard that Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, and did research in agentic AI and say that is the next big wave I think is going to happen. And I think most firms will adopt it once Microsoft integrates with Copilot. The firms I work with are very Microsoft-centric. We live on Excel, Word, Teams, Outlook. And I think tools that are behind Microsoft's security layer that protects it, that are in there, we're going to trust more. Now, Microsoft always takes multiple versions. Most of us remember Skype and LAMP before Teams. But we're getting close, I think, to where Copilot, once it evolves in the fintech space, the Fortune 1000, and it gets really dialed in to where it's working well and people understand it, we'll start to see the accounting firms adopt Copilot and variations of it, knowing how to take, for instance, if my firm's in automotive dealerships, I will take all those automotive dealership audits, the tax returns, put it into a module inside of Microsoft's Graph, and then I'll be able to query that securely with my own information data without educating the rest of the database. Right. And that's what I'm excited about, is Agentic actually allows me to go beyond that to other databases and from the client's data spike, and then bring it in NAS.
That's a lot of data and inputs, coming from various aspects.
Yes.
Right. So now we have spoken about mistakes and things, but top 2 mistakes CPA firms make when they go digital.
Well, we talked about learning, not doing enough training and communication. We're all guilty of this. We get busy and so we don't communicate as well. But I think part of the learning organization means that when you make any change or anything, you need to communicate with the people constantly before, during, after. And we're actually recommending that once you finish training for something, it's all recorded, but do follow-up training and sessions to make sure people truly understand. Because most of us will pick up 50% of the training that's live. We'll reference that, but we don't know how to do it. And we need to keep doing lots and lots of follow-up training to make sure we're doing it and doing it the right way, because those things are changing as well. And then I think, security is the thing, like I said, I've become well aware of that firms, you don't want to go for the lowest cost solution out there. You want to have an enterprise level solution that makes sure you're protected, because if you get breached, it's over. It's all over.
Yeah, lot at risk, lot at stake.
Yeah. And what we learned from the generative AI is they're using it very effectively to write extremely complex, not only phishing emails, but voicemails and even QR codes. They're using it to get people to drop their guard. And one of the things we talk a lot about is new employees that put their profiles on LinkedIn and all that. The hackers have automated tools that actually will copy that profile and use it against the company. So we're recommending all the firms go security and communication. So I didn't talk about tax and audit. I didn't talk about
what the idea was.
But it was realized that's what we're leaving behind when we chase all these shiny objects. Yeah.
One book you recommend for the listeners?
I'm reading The Wave on about AI, and I can't remember the author of it, but I think it was Bill Gates recommended it. So it's in Bill Gates' recommendations. And it explains AI beyond, like, how's it going to impact society, because society impacts businesses, which impacts the people we work with, our clients, and then into the firms. So it's a backward way of looking at it. So I like that book. I also follow a gentleman named Bernard Marr. He writes for Forbes magazine on AI topics. And a person that's outside an industry, Shelley Palmer, he writes from the media perspective, but a lot of those things filter into the accounting firms. And so those are the 3 resources I rely on regularly, right?
So maybe for the audience, that's a good reference point Roman gave us. So on that note, Roman, I would like to kind of conclude, but before we do that, I would want you to tell listeners where they can kind of connect with you.
Okay.
And
well, if you go to Rightworks website, on the resources tab, what happens is all the education we do for both BDO and for accounting firms, we create those videos and we make them available. We think it's important that people understand what our firm's doing, what are they adopting, what's working, what's not. So if they go to the on-demand webinars, they're always there. I write articles for the associations, for Thomson Reuters. PPC's MAP handbooks, which have been around for 30 years. I was the author of all the technology chapters, and I still update those. So I have to update that every year. So that's another resource. But I write articles for Thomson Reuters, for CPA associations everywhere. But everything is republished on our website and our blog.
Thank you so much, Ram. Thank you so much, Roman, for being here. It was lovely hosting you. And for our audience, this is Vibhu Khanna signing off from BDO Evolve 2025 WTA podcast. It was a very special edition, and thanks for tuning in.